Good afternoon, Rotarians and guests. Welcome to the Rotary Club of Toledo. Today we'll present another great program with Gus Mancy. I want to thank Walt McGee for the great videos of Zoo Day and our Polio Plus event that were shown right before the meeting. Before we get started with our meeting, I'd like to ask Travis Tangeman to come up and deliver a reflection, and then have Emily Skilleter lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good afternoon, everybody. In March of 2015, shortly after moving to Toledo, Tracy and I attended our first meeting of this club. Almost immediately, we were both engaged by the mayor of bowling, Tommy Romer. Like the most aggressive fraternity rush chair you'd ever hope to find, he approached with that quintessential Tommy voice saying, "Trav, you got to bowl." Did I want to bowl? No, but I was included. And now I truly identify my time in Rotary with the amazing people I have met and grown to love in the various fellowship groups and committees within Rotary that I'm proud to be a part of. And as we continue our club, celebrate our history, and grow our membership, it seems like the right time to share from an old passage that reads, "It amuses me now to think that your organization spends so much time looking for new members when I was there all the time. Do you remember me? I'm the fellow who came to every meeting, but nobody paid attention. I tried several times to be friendly, but everyone seemed to have their own friends to talk to and sit with. I sat down among many unfamiliar faces several times, but they didn't pay much attention to me. I hoped somebody would ask me to join one of the committees or somehow participate and contribute, but no one did. Finally, because of illness, I missed a meeting. At the next meeting, no one asked where I'd been. I guess it didn't matter very much whether I was there or not. On the next meeting date, I decided to stay home, and when I attended the next meeting, no one asked me where I'd been the time before. You might say I'm a good guy, a good family man, that I hold down a responsible job and love my community. You know who else I am? I am the member who never came back. Now, if we all take our love of this club to heart, like Tommy and so many others have, and we all not only recruit new members, but include and invite existing members, both old and new, to take an active role, imagine the amazing future our storied club will continue to have.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Travis and Emily. As we begin our meeting, I'd like to thank and acknowledge SSOE, this month's sponsor. There are no visiting Rotarians today, but if you do have a guest, I would ask that you please bring them to the floor mic to introduce them.
President Dick and fellow Rotarians, I'd like to introduce my daughter, Mackenzie Rothkar. She is out of school today for teacher in service and has decided to come to Rotary with me.
President Dick, I'm following in Katie's footsteps. Another teacher service day at Ottawa Hills, so Travis and I brought our daughter Bryn today.
Bryn?
President Dick, it's with great pleasure that I introduce Lisa Wagner. Lisa's with Monroe Bank and Trust, and Lisa has a great interest in joining Rotary of Toledo.
Welcome to you all. Glad to have you here today. Now would be a great time to check into social media, let everyone know you are at the Rotary Club of Toledo, and then I'd ask you to please silence or turn off your phones for the rest of our meeting. I want to offer thanks. The Rotary golf season is over, and I want to offer thanks to past President Brad Rubini for leading us this year. Brad did a great job, and I also want to thank our statistician and record keeper, Alex Dew, for the work he did. want to announce again Rotary Kids Day. This is coming up on Saturday, October 27th at Middle Grounds Metro Park. This is truly a family event. It's geared toward children preschool through 4th or 5th grade. And we're going to have various stations at the Middle Grounds in cooperation with the Metro Parks for the kids to visit, learn about water, clean water, what we need to do to keep our rivers and lakes safe. It's a cooperative effort with the other 8 or 9 Rotaries in our area and our President's Council, and it's part of what the presidents in these Rotaries are trying to do to get together, to group together, leverage the power of Rotary and work together. And we heard a lot about wanting family events. So this is the first event. We planned 3 or 4 this coming Rotary year. There's a lot about it in the Spoke, and if you're interested to bring your children, your grandchildren, neighbors' children, whomever, it'd be a great event. It's only $5, includes a t-shirt for the kids and all kinds of activities. You did see a video about Polio Plus at the Pub, our event on October 3rd at the Paula Brown Shop. We had over 70 in attendance. We had a beautiful evening, and we raised approximately $2,300 at the event for polio eradication. That amount will in effect triple with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation matching grant. They double those donations. So it's about $7,000 because of that event that will go to polio eradication, thanks to everyone who was involved with that event. Through the years, we've had several distinguished men and women serve as president of this club. And you often hear about past President Dick, past President Sharon, et cetera. But I don't think we give these people enough recognition, and I'm growing to appreciate what they've all done and what they've needed to do as I proceed through my year. So today I would like to honor our past presidents. We have a couple of tables here filled with them. We thank them for being here. Some could not be here today. You'll see their names and the year of service on the board. I am going to read each name, and I'd ask you to stand when I do. Please hold your applause till we've gone through the list. It's a long list, and then we'll give them the recognition they so deserve. So starting with year of service, longest to go to most current, past President Dick Anderson, past President Clint Mock, past President Walt Churchill, past President Ben Dansard, past President Rick Hartley, past President Chuck Schaub, past President R.C. Young, past President Steve Martindale, past President and past District Governor Chuck Stocking, past President Sue Martin, whom I know cannot be here today, past President Eric Summons, past President Marv Himmeline, past President Ron Olszewski, past President Chuck Mann, past President Hunt Sears, past President George Eistetter, past President Walter McGee, past President John Wasserman, past President and past District Governor Helen Balanis, past President Brad Rubini, past President Eric Fankhauser, past President Gary McBride, past President Tom Backoff, past President Riaz Chaudhry, past President Joe Tefelsky, past President Andy Stewart, past President Stacy Hammer, and immediate past President Sharon Skilleter. Let's give all these wonderful people a round of applause. Thank you all so very much for your service. At this time,
2 minutes on the mic.
No, we already took care of that. We were going to silence that mic yes, but thank you. At this time, I would like to invite Katie Hahn to the podium to introduce new member Stephen Vasquez.
Stephen Vasquez has been a coveted member of the City of Toledo that we've all been trying to get as a member of the Toledo Rotary. We had a draft a couple of years ago. We all fought about it. Kevin and I went back and forth. Who would actually get Stephen to join? Well, finally, it was the right time, and Stephen actually has told me he was ready to join. So I'm very excited to bring Stephen Vasquez, a very good friend of mine, into the club. He's been a part of the City of Toledo for a long time through his family's tradition here in Toledo, through the police department, the city, Toledo School, the Toledo Public School. His mom works for the University of Toledo, and the Latino community himself. Stephen has been a part of Toledo. One of the things that he did was start and be part of the founding group who started EPIC. And since then, he has done many other things that have really given Toledo back the pride that we had. One of the most recent things was the Toledo Air Show. I was very excited to be there and to be a part of it. And it's exciting now to bring his commitment to Toledo right back here to the Toledo Club of Rotary. So with all that, I can talk about the stuff his pet peeves, but I would rather just have everybody stop and talk to him and ask how you, based on what Travis said, can help him get involved. So many people are bowlers or golfers. Just ask him, and he'll be happy to join and do something with you.
At this time, I'd like to invite Joe Sharp to the podium to introduce presenter Gus Mancy.
Good afternoon. It is my pleasure to introduce Gus Mancy. He is a partner with the Mancy Restaurant Group here in Toledo, Ohio. Gus, along with his two brothers and two cousins, operate 5 restaurants. Gus received his business degree from the Ohio State University, and Gus and his cousin Mike operate Mancy Steakhouse. He is the founding director of Signature Bank and past president of the Northwest Ohio Restaurant Association. Please welcome Gus Mancy.
Thank you, Joe. It's an honor to be here today, so thanks, everyone. I see a lot of familiar faces, friends, and associates out there, so it can't be that hard to fill 10 or 15 minutes of time here talking. But 3 things that I have learned about a speaking engagement: be short, be funny, and then sit down. Hopefully, at the end of this presentation, you'll walk away with a few tidbits about our family business and about the restaurant industry. But first, I spoke to the Kiwanis Club maybe 5 years ago, and there were about 50, 60 people. And so when Joe called, he's like, yeah, I want you to come down and talk to the Rotary. I had no idea I would be looking at 150 plus people right now. So hopefully my remarks are well taken, and although unrehearsed, I think this is something that's been a part of me, so it should just flow right out. I'd like to give a little shout out to Brianne out there. Are you, Bryn? Is that? Hi. I see her playing up. She's a neighbor up at Cottage. So I get to see her, and I get to see her today. So I usually never see her in the winter. So nice to have you. I would have brought my youngest today if I'd have known you were here. Anyways, the founding of Mancy's. I'm going to go off on a tangent real quick. My grandfather immigrated from Greece in 1917. He wanted to come to America as he heard stories of bustling cities, good jobs, and yes, roads paved of gold. He was told fellow villagers from his isle village in Crete were in Toledo. So once he cleared Ellis Island, he bought a train ticket to Toledo. And ironically, here's my little tangent. His first stop was at Monroe and Summit. He kind of walked around downtown Toledo, and he noticed a candy store, the Christopolis candy store. And it's literally, it probably was within 100 or 200 yards of where we're at right now, which I find it ironic because 100 years later, I'm here talking to you within yards of where he first came to Toledo. So upon arriving, the Christopolis family welcomed him. They fed him. They even opened his house to him before he could find housing. Years later, he ended up marrying their daughter, kind of full circle there. But my grandfather, when he first got to Toledo, he knew he wanted to be in the restaurant business, but he needed capital. Finding the best possible job he could was in a steel mill in Akron, Ohio. He moved to Akron for about 4 years, and in 1921, he returned to Toledo and opened up at the location we're at now, Mancy Steakhouse. He opened up the Ideal Restaurant. He partnered with his cousin, first cousin, Nikolas Graham, and they worked together half days each for the following 25 years. The restaurant was open 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. My grandfather would work 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., 7 days a week. So we have some pretty big shoes to fill. The third generation, believe me, there's no way we're coming close to working 85, 90 hours a week. But we do work hard. There's a picture here. This is post-prohibition. So they called a photographer up, and they brought, had a couple guests there. My grandfather's on the far right. His first cousin, Nick Graham, is on the far left. And Nick Graham has many descendants that live in Toledo. Some of you may know John Graham. He's a retired Owens, Illinois executive. But very proud of that full bar, post-prohibition. They worked very hard, and it was 1945, December, Christmas Eve, they decided to close a restaurant for the evening and one day. The end of World War II, people were celebrating, the holiday was special. When they went to lock the front door, they had no key. And that's proof right there that they had not closed a restaurant for the first 25 years. During the Depression, just prior to the Depression, they'd opened up a second restaurant, the Commercial, in downtown Toledo. It was very successful. And my grandfather would tell me a story about the restaurant, about the Depression, and how the competing restaurant, Kitty Corner from his restaurant, was owned by a Toledo Trust executive. And he believes that's why the note was called and not because of the Great Depression. So, a little funny tidbit there. The Mancy's Ideal in 1964 was purchased by the second generation, my father, John, and his twin brother, George. There is a picture of them. There's the restaurant as it appeared in the 50s and 60s. And there's John and George, 1964. My father on the left and his twin on the right. They quickly kind of changed from a breakfast, lunch, and dinner place into a more lunch and dinner place. And Hootenannies, some popular band in the 60s, would play every Friday night. The place was packed. They found a lot of success in the dinner evening, dinner business, the steak business, and through the 60s, the restaurant morphed into the steakhouse that it is today. So no more breakfast, limited lunch, and a lot of steak. In 1973, the restaurant was completely destroyed by fire, and after an exhaustive 6-month search, going around the city looking to see where they would locate the new restaurant, and even purchasing some property right next to the famous Frank Uncle's restaurant in the 70s. They were going to build a riverfront restaurant. They decided just to stay on Phillips. And they renovated a building that they had owned next door. The building that we're presently in is probably 60 feet from where the building originally stood. That building was built in 1901, and it's a fun building. It's a beautiful building to be in. I think we have a few pictures. That's kind of when the restaurant started. Picture in the Blade from, that was probably 1968, and the Blade brought it back in 2013. But Friday night at Mancy's, Tiffany lamps, and the hosts taking care of business. And that is the restaurant. That's the dining room that was destroyed by the fire. The whole building was, and then rebuilt into what is now our steakhouse. On the far left, I was a busboy for a long time. I started out as a dishwasher, busboy. All my brothers did. My brother John in the Ohio State shirt. Cousin John runs Bluewater. Cousin Nick washing dishes. He runs Shorty's. And on the far right is Mike, our grandfather. He passed in 1988. So I was fortunate enough to be able to work at least 5 or 6 years with him and learn a lot of his little business nuances and sayings. One of them was he always told us you have to buy the best and freshest foods. He also believed in paying Uncle Sam first, your employees second, your purveyors third, and if there's any money left over, that's yours. And I remember asking him, what if there's no money left over? And his answer was, well, then you better work a hell of a lot harder. So those things have a tendency to stick with you. So I returned back to the business in 1989 after a 3-year learning career with the Stouffer Restaurant Company. In fact, the second generation imposed two rules, two things we had to achieve before we could come back to the family business. And one was a college education. 2, we had to have a multi-year job away from the family business. My father always said he wants somebody else to give me my lumps and not him. Believe me, they still gave us a lot of lumps. Since 1989, myself and my cousin Mike have been at the Steakhouse, and in lieu of sounding like a commercial, I'll go super fast. 97, we opened Mancy's Italian. My brother George, managing partner and executive chef, he had a ton of responsibility. He was 25 years old when we did that project, and we tried to help him as much as we could, but we were getting buried over at the Steakhouse. Eventually, my brother John, who was a chef with Morton's Steakhouse for many years on the East Coast and in Chicago, went over there to help George for a few years and learn the front of the house operations. Once John was ready, he always was ready, but once he was able to help George, he took all his chefery knowledge, his front of the house knowledge in 2005. John became the managing partner at Mancy's Bluewater Grille, which really achieved instant success. I think by then we were a little bit smarter and had a few more things figured out. So it's fun. It's fun. Meanwhile, we had my cousin Nick, who had a successful 7-year career outside of the family business. He was a labor relations attorney, and he would call and say, I want to get back into the restaurant. I want to get into the restaurant business. I'm like, Nick, well, what do you want to do? And he's like, I'm a freak about smoking meats. So Shorty's was open in 2003, and Nick is the power behind that brand for sure. Right around 03, 04, 05, we all had kids. We have a boatload of Mancy's in the 4th generation. It's probably why we all just stuck to one thing and really didn't grow a lot for 5, 10, 12 years. In 2017, we opened a small restaurant, Mancy's Ideal, to pay homage to the scratch foods that were produced by the first and second generations. Our glorified double cheeseburger is a runaway success, and that is the same burger that we had on our menu during the 50s and 60s, and same name. Other items, meatloaf, fried chicken, big salads, and fresh fish, are rounding out this casual menu. So that's been a fun little project and something a little different for us. In the past few years, we've kind of implemented an edge strategy in lieu of building more restaurants. Shorty's Back 40 was founded 2 years ago, and it's a catering commissary and an event center, and it's allowed Shorty's to extend its brand. Last year, Mancy's Italian opened a wine shop. Right now, there's over 1,200 selections of wine in the bottle shop at Mancy's Italian, and so that's another way to extend to the edges without actually opening an entirely new business. Mancy Steakhouse, we're doing a lot more catering, and just this year we partnered with the Marathon Oil Company and brought a restaurant into their boutique hotel, a 99-room, beautiful boutique hotel, and our restaurant. I think there's a picture of the interior of the new restaurant. That's the Steakhouse today. Maybe two more. We'll come back to that picture in a minute. That's the old Steakhouse, second floor. And there's a new restaurant, a day shot. It's very nicely lit in the evening. So full bar, small restaurant, maybe 80 seats, and then a banquet facility that seats up to 375 people. So that's been a fun project. Opportunities in the future in our industry, and the fourth generation is something that we get together and talk about often. But first, does anyone here know the meaning of restaurant? It's a word derived from French slang, restaurant. It means to restore and nourish. And I believe right now there's so many examples of restaurants where we just go to nourish ourselves, but not to restore. And it's one thing I think we are doing well. When you come to Mancy's Steakhouse, Bluewater, Italian, you're able to relax, restore, and nourish, eat or dine. I went to a quick service barbecue restaurant to check it out a few months ago, and I wanted to have a beer, sit down with my kids, relax, and the beer came with the food. 3 minutes after we got there, we woofed our food down, and we were out of there in about 15 or 20 minutes. That's the future of the restaurant business, they say, but I might argue something a little bit differently. So a little bit about our industry. $799 billion in sales last year were generated just in restaurants. Restaurant industry employs 10% of our nation's workforce. And just in the state of Ohio this year, we're going to experience a 2.8% growth in revenue in restaurants. And that's for a Midwestern state. Other states, their businesses are growing at a little higher click. Here's an interesting fact. 1955, when the picture of that old restaurant was up, 25% of the household food dollar was spent eating out. Today, 2017 stat, according to the National Restaurant Association, 48% of our household food dollar is spent dining out. And I know Eric Frankhauser spends a hell of a lot more money than that. So our industry, we have challenges right now, and I'll buzz through them real quick for the sake of time. Low unemployment challenges is forcing us to raise wages and pay more money. I don't buy all the, I hate to say this, it's the only thing that I'm not allowed to say anything political. I don't buy the excuses that a raising minimum wage would affect the restaurant industry. They say that if the minimum wage goes from where it is now to just $10 or $11 an hour, that 15% of the nation's restaurants would close. I would strongly believe that 15%, those weakest 15% of restaurants are either already A, going out of business, or B, should be smart enough to raise their prices by $1 or $2 to cover the wage. It's something that we're doing right now. We believe that there is no minimum wage anymore. It's a market-driven wage. Many young cooks, 18, 19, 20 years old, with any kind of talent, should be making $12, $13, $14, and $15 an hour. They are in our restaurants, and we see that going up again and again. As another challenge, the proliferation of national chain restaurants that have Wall Street money and private equity money behind them, and they can build these beautiful restaurants. It is expensive, it's capital intensive to get into our business. The barriers to entry are high if you want to build a beautiful restaurant where one can go to restore and nourish. Other challenges, we have a very sophisticated audience. You all are networked into social media and instant communications. If someone has a poor dining experience, it's like the Breck commercial in the 1970s, only worse. They tell a friend who tells 10 friends, and so on and so on and so on. It is a whole new area that we need to manage and be aware of as independent restaurant operators, and we have become very proactive and are in tune and listening to our customers via social media. Complexity of business is a huge challenge right now. Multiple government agencies to deal with, from food safety to complex IRS rules on tipped employees. My father comes into our office and sees the books, sees the secretaries and accountants working, and he says, "Oh my gosh," he goes, "I don't think I could have been able to do this. It was much easier to run a business in the 1960s and 70s. Thank God that was his prime of his business career." He really, in a way, feels badly for us. Opportunities. There's a new term called grocerants, and a grocerant would be a restaurant that competes with grocery stores. And Walt, I can tell you that you have more prepared foods in your grocery store than you ever did before, and it's a perfect example of smart grocers competing with that restaurant dollar and having prepared foods and foods that are better and fresher. And I know Walt buys Foley's fish just like we do out of Boston, and he buys some good beef too. So I'll give Walt a plug there. But a smart restaurateur needs to give it right back to the grocery industry. We need to compete with the grocery industry too, and how are we going to do that? A perfect example is the growth of Domino's Pizza, how they've taken technology and driven it through their business. If you'd have bought Domino's Pizza 7-8 years ago, their stock for $3 or $4 a share, you wouldn't be sitting here right now. You'd be in Jamaica. It's now almost $300 a share, and it is the growth and them embracing technology. They're definitely leaders in our industry. But when you look at like our segment, the casual dining segment, the upscale casual dining segment, what are we going to do to compete better? And we're starting to do that. And the examples are adapting catering and bulk food pickup into our restaurants, whether they're single meals or meals to feed 30. We're pretty proactive at Shorty's, Mancy Steakhouse, and now Mancy's Italian to get that done. We're also at Mancy's Italian, the bottle shop. That would be an example of reaching out into a different industry, and then packaging foods to go for your parties to again compete on a broader scale, just not with restaurants, but also with grocers. Other opportunities, embracing technology. Innovation is coming, and what will our fourth generation of Mancy's be doing in 15 or 20 or 30 years? Right now, we're already capturing data. Our data is AI-driven. knowing our guests, anticipating future business demand. Our accounting network talks to our point of sale, and they all talk to our reservation system. I can get a report in the morning. In 30 years that I've been back at Mancy Steakhouse, I've never seen reports like I'm getting now. Top 5 spends last night, first name, last name, exactly what they bought. An example would be Mark. Mark buys 2 bottles of Stag's Leap Cabernet. That's going to be forever attached to his name. The next time he makes a reservation, we know the last time he was in, 2 bottles of Stag's Leap Cabernet were purchased. We could dig further and look at all his purchases and even look if he's a good tip or not. It's almost scary what information is at your fingertips, and I'm talking literally seconds to gather this information. Robots are not far off. I saw a robotic pizza maker inside of a food truck in San Francisco. Literally, the robot takes a dough ball, flattens it, sauces it, puts the cheese, puts the condiments on it that you've ordered. No human has touched the pizza. So what are people demanding? Convenience, obviously. And one argument I want to make is fast food restaurants and quick service restaurants, fast food McDonald's, quick service like Chipotle. I think they will morph together and become fast casual restaurants. People are demanding healthier foods. You're not getting that at McDonald's. You are getting healthier foods at Chipotle, but then there's safety issues with food handling. And now we're reading about robotics in produce fields and robotics in processing and shipping facilities, and then robotics in our restaurant. So someday our food may never be touched by a human hand. And if that's the case, we'll have a extremely safe food supply. But I think these are all things that the 4th generation of Mancy's are going to have to deal with. But one thing we have writing in our favor is an experiential component. I talked earlier about going to that barbecue restaurant and having my beer 3 minutes after we got there and the food arriving at the same time. That's not experiential. And hopefully we're going to be able to keep delivering an experiential dining experience at our restaurants, places where people want to see and be seen, places where you can go to restore and nourish, places where you can get healthy menu options. They say 70% of diners, when they're looking at a menu, they're thinking about health, even though they might stray against it and get the 24-ounce porterhouse and not the 7-ounce petite filet. There's a dynamic that with an educated consumer, we need to deliver this healthy dining component. The last thing I'd want to say about opportunities is word of mouth. And my father, my uncle, my grandfather said it, there is no better advertising than word of mouth. Serving great food, offering great service, while delivering a value. I need to underline value. Really gives people something to talk about and a desire to return again and again to our business. It's something that we talk about as a family, and although we're independent operators, we do get together often and talk about many things. So in conclusion, currently there is about 5 fourth-generation Mancy's that are very interested in the business. 4 of them are in college now. And believe me, they'll have to go out and work a few years before they get back to our business. What does the future behold for them and for our business? I hope that someday, in 100 years, there'll be a Mancy talking to the Rotarians, maybe at this location, 200 years after my grandfather came here. That is it. Thank you. Have a nice evening. Or afternoon.
See if they have any questions for you. If anyone has a question or two for Gus, please step up to the mic.
First of all, it was a great presentation. I used to golf with your uncle George at Sylvania Country Club. What a great guy. But my question to you is about distinguishes, to me, a restaurant depends on service and quality of food. How do you compare your group with the national chains or national famous restaurants? Where do you stand as comparison to them?
With which kind of national chain restaurants? Okay. Yeah, so which national chain restaurants? A steakhouse or?
Well, specialty restaurants. Like
Sure.
a small group like you know, like Main Street Venture and others, and small
Yeah, sure.
groups like that.
Well, Main Street Venture is a regional player with probably 25 units. They're very strong. They're using technology like we're using. Yeah, very, very much a competitor. Absolutely, we compete each and every day with everyone that serves a steak or a fresh piece of fish.
But as you compare yourself to chain restaurants, how do you beat the chain restaurants? What makes you beat them?
Well, I'll tell you what, a chain restaurant to me is like trying to turn the Titanic. We are much more nimble. Features and specials, the chefs adapting quickly. We're able to turn our menus much quicker. I think there's a creativity component, a freshness component that we're able to deliver, and also a personal touch. Often chain restaurants, their managers move year to year. I was a chain restaurant manager with Stouffer's. They owned 82 restaurants. I was there with Stouffer Restaurant Company for 3 years, and I moved. I was at 4 different restaurants, each time getting a promotion in 3 years, in between Cleveland and Columbus. So getting to know the guests, getting to know our community, giving back to our community. I think the independent restaurants do a heck of a lot more in giving back to our community than the national chains. But I'm not putting Main Street Venture in the national chain arena. They're a smaller player than the big guys.
I guess that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Gus, for that great presentation on the history of Mancy's. To show our appreciation, the Toledo Rotary Club Foundation is going to make a donation in your name to the Rotary International Polio Plus Fund. And I'd also like to present you with this Historical Tales of Toledo, as told by our own past president, Clint Mock.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Please join us next week when our speaker will be Jim Roby from W.E. Upjohn Institute. Immediately following today's program, the Disability Service Committee will be meeting in the Board of Governors room on the 3rd floor. Stephen, welcome again to Toledo Rotary, and Katie, thank you very much for bringing Stephen here. And there he is, waiting in the wings. We missed him last time, but past President Chuck Mann.
A man wakes up one morning to find a bear on his roof. He looks in the yellow pages, and sure enough, there's an ad for bear removers. He calls the number, and the bear remover says he'll be over in 30 minutes. The bear remover arrives, gets out of his van, and he has with him a ladder, a baseball bat, a shotgun, and a mean old pit bull. "What are you going to do?" the homeowner asks. "I'm going to put this ladder up against the roof, and then I'm going to go up there and knock the bear off the roof with this baseball bat. When the bear falls off, the pit bull is trained to grab him in a very special place and not let go. The bear will then be subdued enough for me to put him in the cage in the back of the van." He hands the shotgun to the homeowner. "What's the shotgun for?" asks the homeowner. "It's for you. If the bear knocks me off the roof, shoot the dog."
Thank you, Chuck. Well, I hope you all have a great week. Remember to be servants out there so we can be the inspiration. We are adjourned.